Hello, good morning, and welcome to everyone in the chat, everyone watching at home. I'm Graham Hughes, and you are watching Morning Brew on Politics Social. I'll just like a big shout out to Ian and Vendetta and Sarah in the chat. We also got Katrina and Martin, Daily Blase. Hey, Darren, how you doing, mate? We've got Yoni in there as well, and others. If you would like to join them in the chat, all you need to do is just hit the subscribe button. Just tap that little subscribe button. And we'll be away. Right, okay, so today we're going to be talking about what happened 25 years ago today and its consequences that have rippled throughout history. So what did happen 25 years ago today? Well, Vladimir Putin became the president, well, the acting president at the time. He was sworn in a few months later, but he became the acting president of Russia. And from that day forth, he has been in control of Russia, and some would argue in control of a lot of the events that are happening around the world. A lot of the things that happen always seem to go in Putin's favour, whether it is the election of Donald Trump or Brexit or our complete inability to do anything whatsoever of any consequence about the looming threat of climate change. I say looming, it's happening. It's happening. We're having storms now. We've had to cancel our trip to Liverpool for New Year. We're staying in Durham because of the weather, because of the extreme weather, which has meant that they've had to cancel New Year's celebrations, Hogmanay celebrations in Scotland. So yeah, that was the moment from whence we shall dive off and have a look at what happened subsequently over the last 25 years. Because it's not been great, I've got to say. And you know what? All things considered, the 25 years before it went amazing, but you did have the end of the Cold War. You did have the fall of the Berlin Wall. You did have the birth of the internet, this new hopeful thing that was going to change humanity for the better. In the 90s, we had that long peace, the long decade from 1989 and November 1989, when the Berlin Wall came down, to September the 11th, 2001. Pretty much. I mean, yeah, we were getting on with stuff. I know there was a horrific war in the Balkans. In Bosnia, we saw what happened in Sarajevo and in Mostar, and in Kosovo. But the international community came together and said, pack that shit in, which was remarkable. In an effective way. In an effective way, they stopped a genocide, and they actually stayed the course. And I know that things aren't perfect in Kosovo right now. I mean, just look, things are never perfect at the best of times, but they're better than they were. But then we hit this snag after snag. I think the first one, which I've just alluded to, well, I didn't allude to it, I just said it, was Putin getting re-elected. Becoming the president of the Russian Federation. This heralded a new era in the relationship between the East and West, which up to that point, the West, well, actually, and after it for a while, the West was very interested in helping Russia get back on its feet. The West gave Russia, after the Soviet Union fell apart, it gave Russia, it lent money to Russia in the billions to get Russia back on its feet. And Russia actually paid back that debt earlier than it was expected to, because of the just unstoppable amount of corruption that has been going on in Russia for the last 35 years, really. And also the natural resources that Russia has, gas and oil and coal and stuff to burn to destroy the world that we're destroying the world with. But then in 2000, another cataclysmic thing happened. Al Gore lost the election to George W. Bush by 500 votes. And that was only because the vote counters in Florida were told to stop counting the votes by the Supreme Court. By the Supreme Court. You wonder why I worry so much about Trump's power in the next year, next 5 years, next 10 years, because of the sway he has over the Supreme Court. They owe him. And we've seen what they're like before, or what they're minded to do. If he tells them not to ban TikTok, they won't ban TikTok. Mark my words. It's going to be up to Trump whether he does that or not. And then he'll be lauded on TikTok by people who use TikTok as the guy who saved TikTok. Quite clever, really, for an idiot. And then we have the 2001 September the 11th attacks. And I think that's what everyone sort of sees as the dawn of everything going wrong. But I think there was a bit of a preamble to that because of Putin getting in Russia, but also George W. Bush getting in America. He was famously called the accidental president at the time. He didn't really expect to win, and he did. And he spent the first few months of his presidency playing golf, not really taking things seriously, and trying to wind down things like the CIA and the FBI because they cost too much money. I mean, who needs a CIA when, you got no threats anymore because history is over? This is what people were talking about in the 1990s. They were saying that history was finished. This is the end of history. Stuff's not going to happen now. Everyone's just going to get on. Yeah, that didn't happen. And then on the 7th of October in 2000, we had the response to September the 11th, less than a month after the attack, which was orchestrated and carried out by majority people from Saudi Arabia. And so the US invaded Afghanistan because that made sense. And they were there for over 20 years, 2 decades. And Britain was there as well, helping out. So, giving soldiers to get murdered, killed, blown up. And we left after 20 odd years. And the Taliban are still in charge. Well, back in charge, I should say. I've got a cough. Just 1 sec. Turn my mic off. Not shook this cold yet. Anyway, so then fast forward to March 2003. We didn't say 2003, did we? We said 2003. And the US thought, you know what? After invading that country that had a little tiny bit to do with September the 11th, but not really. We accused them of harbouring Osama bin Laden, but it turned out that he wasn't even in Afghanistan. He was in Pakistan. Anyway, so they decided to invade Iraq, which genuinely had nothing to do whatsoever with 9/11. I mean, none of the people in the planes, none of the people who organised it had any connections with Iraq. And that triggered 2 decades of instability in the Middle East. The fallout of which we are still experiencing to this very day. Look at the fall of the al-Assad regime in Syria. Not that that's a bad thing, but the fact that the consequences, the turmoil that was caused by that invasion in the region, giving birth to things like ISIS, which was an offshoot of Al-Qaeda. Originally, it was Al-Qaeda in Iraq, wasn't it? And just creating a base for a multitude of horrible things to happen. Talking of horrible things happening, 20 years ago on Boxing Day, we had the tsunami, which killed nearly 250,000 people, wiped out in just 1 day. Just 1 day, just massive earthquake all across Asia, Africa. The Aceh province of Indonesia was just wiped out. It hit as far as Sri Lanka and killed people there. I mean, it was absolutely horrific. But that wasn't a man-made disaster. That was just something, that happens now and again. There are earthquakes. Actually, no, I'll take that back. The fact that the earthquake happened wasn't a man-made disaster. The fact that there weren't enough early warning sirens to tell people to get to higher ground, that was a disaster. That was a disaster. Because developing countries can't afford that kind of stuff, and developed nations are loath to help people out by the looks of things. But then in 2005, and I don't want to make this sound like, it's all doom and gloom, but like 2005, the Drop the Debt campaign, the Jubilee 2000 campaign, was successful in getting these banks, financial institutions around the world to drop these ridiculous debts that the developing nations had racked up in the latter half of the 20th century, because they've been run by dickheads, and eventually, that dickhead had been toppled. Maybe there'd been a coup d'état. Maybe they'd been voted out. It was usually violence, the getting rid of these people, and then the newcomers were saddled with the bill of the people they just chucked out of the country, or had shot dead for their crimes against humanity. It's like, oh, so sorry, I've taken on their debt. Imagine moving into a new house and then finding that the person who owned the house before you had £100,000 worth of gambling debt, and you had to pay it. And you're like, well, I didn't rack that up. Well, why? What's it got to do with me? That was the previous person that you lent that money to. And in any other situation, if it was lending this kind of money to a company, the banks would have written it off because they're insured. They don't care. They would have said, oh, well, look, we're never going to get this money back. But it was in the West's interest, in developed nations' interest, to keep the third world, as it was then, and developing nations, in perpetual debt forever. Anyway, David saying, Graham, write a book, mate. I've written a book. It's called Man of the World by Graham Hughes. I want to write the sequel, Top of the World, this year. But I need a couple of things to come together in order for me to have the time and the headspace to be able to do that. But hopefully that'll happen. And then, I was talking about the Boxing Day tsunami not being a man-made disaster, but what was a man-made disaster in 2005, Hurricane Katrina. Slammed into New Orleans, devastated the Gulf Coast. It was one of the deadliest hurricanes in US history. And it was, first of all, caused by climate change. Let's not beat around the bush. Climate change means there's more energy in our system. More energy means more airflow, means more storms, okay? More energy. That's all you need to know. We've been setting off the equivalent of a nuclear bomb every minute of every day since the Middle Ages. Equivalent of, right? That's how much energy, extra energy we are putting into the Earth system with burning fossil fuels, because we're digging this stuff out the ground and then we're burning it on the soil, on the ground, and then the gases from that go into the atmosphere. I mean, that seems pretty straightforward to me. Is carbon dioxide a greenhouse gas? Yes, it is. Anyone with a lick of scientific knowledge knows that. Is there carbon in carbon fuels? Well, what do you think? Where do you think the carbon dioxide goes? Do you think it just dissipates into space? No, it doesn't work like that. Anyway, so, but the Hurricane Katrina should have been the wake-up call for America and the world to do something about climate change. But no, that didn't happen, because who was in charge at the time? George W. Bush. And he didn't probably believe in climate change because he was a dickhead. I mean, he looks good now compared to Trump, but then again, the lichen underneath a rock looks good compared with Donald Trump in terms of being able to be a decent president. Anyway, moving on. Then we had the global financial crisis. So we had the sort of, the high point of Obama being elected in 2008 was, undermined from the get-go by the fact that George W. Bush and other leaders around the world, and our leaders in the UK aren't innocent of this either, went, oh, I know, let's just deregulate the banks and the financial people and just let them make as much money as they like, and they can lie and cheat and make as much money as they like because we like money and just money. Yay, money. And we created a bubble, and the bubble burst quite spectacularly, and a lot of people lost everything. The Lehman Brothers bankruptcy, the credit crunch, the global recession was all a man-made disaster. I mean, you couldn't make it more of a man-made disaster, which the repercussions of which we're still feeling today, because that indirectly led to Brexit. The Brexit vote, people were feeling poorer than they had been. It led to austerity, which turned people against each other and had people fighting amongst themselves because they were saying, oh, that person over there from another country is getting a free house. No, they're not, dickhead. They're not getting a free... What do you mean they're getting a free house? You do know that if you come from another country as an immigrant to this country, you've got to wait 10 years before you can get benefits. When you get your stamp in your passport when you're from another country, to say that you can stay in this country for a bit, it says on the stamp, no recourse to public funds. 10 years you've got to be in the country, mate. You can't just turn up from any country in the world and go, oh, what a house. But that idea that people can do that has been spread all over the media because we've allowed the media to just write any old shit that it wants. We've allowed the media to use slap suits to shut up anyone who says anything negative, who says, you know, oh, that's just, anything, not let's just say anything negative, but like says anything true about these newspapers. They slap them down. They've got the money, they've got the resources to do it. Don't forget Rupert Murdoch's shithole press, the Daily the News of the World, the Sun, the Times. He hasn't admitted culpability, or his companies haven't admitted culpability for any of the shit they've ever done. They've just paid people off. They just pay them off because, and Hugh Grant explained this really well. When you're offered £10 million by the lawyers of News International, and you say, no, I'm not taking your money, I am going to go to court because it's the principle of the thing. And then that person is awarded by the court £9,999,999 1 penny less than the 10 million they were offered before the court case. They have to pay for all of the court costs, which can be millions, because obviously the lawyers for News International are going to be racking up huge bills. And so this lawfare, which we're accused of using, which never seems to work for our side, you know, Donald Trump can cause as much carnage as he likes, murder people on Capitol Hill and steal documents, secret documents, and sell them to the highest bidder. That's fine, you know, he can get away with that. But, you know, an actual investigative journalist who exposes something horrible that someone who writes for a newspaper has done. Oh, no one's going to go to court for that. No one's going to go to jail for that. It's just that you see that little what's that little wizened creep look? He looks like Dr. Zoo, not Dr. Zoo. He looks like the Grinch. He looks like the Grinch, but like after crack, like, you know, the before and after crack pictures. Meth. He looks like the after meth picture of the Grinch. Lawrence Fox, that's the bastard. He can write really horrible racist shit online. You can't. But he can, because he's loaded. He can write what he likes, you know. Unbelievable. Anyway, so we had the credit crunch and obviously the repercussions of that. And then also we had the Haiti earthquake in 2010, which killed over 200,000 people, smacked into Port-au-Prince, the capital there, and left the country in a prolonged crisis from which it still hasn't recovered. And also the Tories won the election in 2010. So, you know, if things were going downhill before then, that downhill ride just rapidly started accelerating. And let's look at something else from the 2000s as well, because I blame this for a lot of the way that the internet grew and media grew, and what we're dealing with entertainment at the moment. The 2000s saw the biggest split in my mind between what we would call, I guess, prestige television, which was, up to that point, you could get actors like Gary Oldman or Michael Caine or Pete Postlethwaite or Sean Connery, or Alan Rickman, who came from working class or middle class families, and they could still make it, you know, at A tier. They could become Hollywood stars, they could be on TV, all that kind of thing. And then into the 2000s, and I kind of, you know, in a weird way, I kind of blame Channel 4 a little bit like this, because the nepotism in Channel 4 was off in charts. Terry Christian can tell you all about this. But it essentially meant that if you wanted to make a decent TV show, you had to have gone to a private school. And I know this thing was happening in the lead up to the Millennium, but it seemed to accelerate. And what it was this split where you would have the presenters of Big Brother, for instance, Davina McCall, ex-junkie, privately educated lady, obviously. No, No one from the working class would have got away with being a junkie in the 90s and then still get a job on MTV. It just wouldn't have happened. And Russell Brand, also privately educated, he went to Sylvia Young School of Acting. I was speaking to Vicky McClure, who was in Line of Duty last September at the Labour Party conference, and she was saying that like she got a place at Sylvia Young, but her parents just couldn't afford it. But anyway, so they were allowed to present, but the people actually on the show were generally not all, because Ben Fogel was privately educated, but yeah, mostly people who were working class, and it was done as a kind of like, I saw it as poverty porn, a lot of it. Like, a lot of it was like, ha ha ha, look at the ridiculous things people who aren't born into riches do. So it was that Jerry Springerification of our media, of what we saw on TV. Our whole thing of it started getting coded that if you saw someone on TV and they were posh and they spoke very posh, they must know what they were talking about. They must be a good person. They must be someone that you'd want to be flying your plane or fixing your teeth or running the country. And then if you heard someone with a working class accent, you just thought Jeremy Kyle. Oh, right, the Benefit Street, Big Brother having a fight, Jay Goody, that kind of person who's, actually probably doesn't have a heart of gold, actually. They're probably just, in it for themselves and quite prejudiced, actually. And I do blame that. And also the fact that idiots were celebrated. This pissed me off back in the 2000s. I wrote a piece at the end of the first decade where I complained about, it's still on my Odyssey Expedition blog, and it was complaining about the fact that morons were being heralded as this is amazing. Look at this idiot, and I still see that today. You've seen it with Trump. I would argue that we saw it with the previous leader of Labour, but I don't want to get into a fight this morning. But yeah, the idea that you could be an idiot and still succeed in life kind of pissed me off, because nearly all of the idiots who succeeded in life were very rich to start with. So what you've got is this tidal wave of mediocrity, the Matt Hancocks of the world, who are so bloody mediocre that they end up killing thousands of people through their own mediocrity. Over 20,000 elderly people died in care homes from COVID because of this horrible little privately educated gobshite who was too busy having an affair in the cupboards of bloody number 10 instead of actually running the country during a pandemic. That's what we got to. Anyway, I've got 5 minutes to go through the last 15 years, so I better hurry up. So 2011, we got the Arab Spring, and we thought, cool. I thought cool. I was getting texts. It was when Twitter came into its own. I was getting text messages from friends of mine in Egypt, in Cairo at the time, from Tahrir Square. It was a really exciting time. They got rid of Mubarak, who had been this dictator of Egypt up to that point. All my life. But then what came of it? The Muslim Brotherhood took over the country for a few years. It didn't go too well. And then you had the Libyan civil war, obviously, which got kicked off after Gaddafi died. Well, it kicked off before Gaddafi died. But yeah, he died in 2011 as well. And then we had the uprising in Syria, which has only just finished. That took 13 years to resolve. One way or another, which was to get rid of the one person who was standing in the way of progress in that country. Now, whether things get better for your average Syrian, I don't know. I will not be pausing asylum claims from Syria just yet. I just err on the side of caution if it was me, but hey, it's not me. And then in 2014, we had the annexation of Crimea. And I see this as one of the worst points of both the Obama administration in the US and the coalition, the Lib Dem Tory coalition in the UK, because they did nothing. The international community did fuck all about the annexation of this huge piece of land that Russia just wanted. And Putin took it. He took it more than anything, I think, as an experiment to see if he could get away with it. And he did. And do you know what happens when you let bullies get away with stuff? They just keep bullying. They get worse. They get more psychotic. Because they go, oh, well, I can get away with that. I can get away with this. Look at Boris Johnson. Look at his career. His career's got more and more sadistic as it went along. So yeah, I really, really, the international community should have absolutely kippered Russia at that point. We need to make this law around the world that international borders are sovereign. Right? You can't have another country coming in and just taking a bit of someone else's country. Could you imagine if the French invaded London because there's some French speakers there? And historically, actually, London used to be part of France, when it was Henry the First of Anjou and England, maybe. I don't know. Yeah, anyway. Or the Normans. The Normans come over for Normandy. These French Vikings come over and just, I don't know, take Lindisfarne. Because they're like, hey, Holy Island, this is ours now. Historically, we had a right to this island. Historically, this should be ours. Ridiculous. Anyway, then 2016, the year that the wheels really came off in my life, and in the world, as far as I can see. I mean, it was a horrific year. You need to understand, I know about all the celebrities who died that year, and it was everyone I liked for some reason. I know you obviously know about Brexit, the Brexit vote, the tragic Brexit vote, and the tragic first presidency of Donald J. Trump. But in my life, the wheels came off my career. I was set up to do a TV show in the States, which fell through at the last minute, which left me in shitloads of debt, which I still haven't paid off. There was my TV show that I'd already made for Lonely Planet was supposed to be shown in America, but they've got to re-edit it with new interviews, and that would have led to another series, and I could have used my tapes from the second, third, and fourth years of my journey to make further series, but that was kiboshed at the last minute by some middle manager at the BBC. My dad was diagnosed with, it was pretty obvious that he had problems up to this point, but he was officially diagnosed with dementia in 2016 as well. And when the Brexit vote came through, I saw my opportunities of working throughout Europe, which was my plan, doing, travel shows, presenting stuff about travel, getting people to go to different countries. I just saw that fall through. Taken from me by the Nigel Faragers and the Richard Ticers and the Andrew Wigmores and the Aaron Bankses and the Rees Moggs and the fucking Goves and the Boris Johnsons and the Isabel Oak shits of the world. All the privately educated people. Literally everyone who told you to vote for Brexit was privately educated. Every freaking one of them. If it was just a few of them, I'd go, okay, well, fair enough. It was only a few. It was only 7%. That's statistically what they should have been in that group. But no, it was every single posh person who told you to vote for Brexit went to private school. And they get to keep the benefits. They can work anywhere they like in Europe because they're rich. They can afford the work visas, the work permits. They can pay someone to fill out all the forms for them. I can't. Can you? Anyway, so then, we rattled on through 2017 with Trump being the leader of the free world and making an absolute bloody dog's dinner of it. And then eventually in December 2019, we started getting reports of a particular virus, a SARS-based virus that had emerged from the Wu-Tang clan, I think, somewhere in Wuhan, in China. Just as Boris Johnson wins a landslide election, 80-seat, majority election, forces through Brexit. We leave the EU at the end of January 2020, and within less than 2 months, we're all locked down in our homes. And the financial hit that so many of us took, and the country took as a whole, was horrific. And the death toll was horrific because we had idiots in charge who couldn't run a fucking bath. And what were they left doing? They were running around like headless chickens, allowing people to move about freely. We had Cheltenham. We had a footy match. We had a fucking footy match in Liverpool. What the hell? When there was a communicable disease that nobody knew how many people it was going to wipe out. We saw the footage from Italy of people on ventilators dying. And we were like, yeah, no, it's just, hang out. And they never shut the fucking airports. In years to come, you'll explain this to your grandkids, right? If you're lucky enough to have them. And you'll say, yeah, well, there was this worry about this global pandemic that was coming in. So what we chose to do was we told everyone to stay at home, but we didn't close the airports. And because we were so concerned about climate change, we forced the planes to take off, fly around for a bit, and then land, burning millions and millions and millions of tons of CO2, releasing that into the atmosphere for no reason on empty planes because they needed to keep their specs at outside the terminals. And you had to fly around and come back because that was the rules. Because, the rules weren't really set up for when there was a pandemic and you didn't really need to fly the planes. You needed to keep your space in the airport, and that was the only way to do it. So we flew empty planes. We know there's a huge problem with the environment, and we continued to fly the planes. Then we had the Russian invasion of Ukraine in 2022, which was just... in February 24th, nearly 3 years ago now, and Russia had already invaded Ukraine. I mean, they've been in the Donbass region and they've obviously annexed Crimea since 2014. They downed a passenger jet, which they seemed to get away with. Like, no one seemed to be too arsed about that. I remember people being bothered about Lockerbie. I remember Lockerbie being a thing. I remember us having a problem with the Libyan regime forever after that. But, we'll just continue letting Putin do whatever he likes after his regime literally blows a passenger jet out of the sky with a rocket. Something that he's done again this week in Kazakhstan with an Azerbaijani jet, which his guys blew out the sky because they thought it was a drone. Because, they look similar, don't they? Idiots. But yeah, then we had the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And then in the UK, we had the mini budget from Liz Truss, which resulted in financial carnage. And then this year, we've had Trump re-elected. I know there's been a happy point that we got rid of the Tories after 14 years of misrule and misfunction, but Labour haven't exactly been, knocking it out the stadium since they got elected, have they? So yeah, that's where we are. We're doing nothing about climate change. We haven't capitalised on so many of the wonderful things that we could have capitalised on. But you know what? I'm going to give you a little bit of a bump at the end here, right? A little bit of a boost, right? Because there's two things I want to say. First of all, I'm looking at this from a very white, middle-class, male, fucked with privilege point of view, right? I have male privilege, I have white privilege, I have middle-class privilege. I'm able to do this, like, fuck, and eke out a living on it, almost. Not that I have any super chats today. But yeah, it's fine. It's fine. I found it, if I do good news stories, then I get super chats. But if I do really bad news stories, then I get super chats. The times I get super chats is when I insult famous people, and everyone goes, "Yeah, I want to insult them as well." They give me a super chat so they can insult them as well, and I can read out their insult. And maybe I should just stick to that. Maybe I should stick. If I was coming at this topic from a developing nation, as someone, historically underprivileged, I would be talking more about the things that have changed in the last 25 years. In the last 45 years, actually, in my lifetime. We have seen infant mortality go through the floor. We have seen vaccinations against deadly diseases like measles and then polio being taken up. AIDS, the AIDS pandemic has been brought under control. Don't forget, at the turn of the millennium, hundreds of thousands of South Africans were dying of AIDS because Thabo Mbeki, the then president of South Africa, encouraged by dickheads from America who were saying, yeah, there's no link between AIDS and HIV, which included the Foo Fighters, by the way. The Foo Fighters got in on that. I've been saying Dave Grohl's a little bit of a dick for a long time before he had a love child. But yeah, that always stuck in my craw. Well, they had someone come on stage at one of their gigs going, yeah, there's no link between AIDS and HIV. It's just all made up. And I'm like, it's not. It's really not. It's killing literally hundreds of thousands of Africans every year. But, whatever. You do you, mate. You do you. But yeah, so that's been brought under control. We've seen literacy rates around the world skyrocket. We've seen people lifted out of abject poverty, like extreme poverty. And I know there are still slums. I know, you walk around the Philippines, you walk around Bogota, you will find horrible, parts of the city where people live in squalor still. But statistically, oh my God, like the quality of life that people endure at the moment is so much better than it was 25 years ago. You look at the rise of technology. There's over 6 billion smartphones in existence right now in the world. Doesn't mean that 6 billion people have a smartphone, but it just means that people can access the internet. They can access information, languages, learning. They can better themselves if they want to. I mean, most people use it for misinformation and cat pictures, but that's getting away from the point. The point is that because of technology, because of a more integrated world, because of a more peaceful world, actually, and I know that sounds a bit mad because there seems to be more armed conflicts going on now than ever before, but it always seems like that. The reality is a lot of those armed conflicts that were happening in West Africa and Central Africa and Southern Africa, Mozambique, Angola, Liberia, Sierra Leone, Rwanda, Burundi, Uganda, DRC, the Republic of Congo, they all petered out. They all petered out, around the turn of the millennium. Things have got better for certain regions of the world, and overall, as humanity, we're doing better than we were. We've got more medicine to people. We've got kids not necessarily dying before the age of 5 at quite the rate that we used to. There are things to be positive about over the last 25 years that we have achieved. But it has really felt like 2 steps forwards, 1 step back. And when you have things like marriage equality coming in, you're like, fantastic, now everyone's going to be accepting of gay people and you won't have to pretend not to be gay. Or if you are gay, it's okay, I don't shag anyone. Stephen Fry. That all seemed like a done deal, but now it's not. Now it's threatened by the likes of Trump, who's like, should 2 men be able to raise a child? Because that child might grow up gay. Which is just a weird argument for me when people who are born to a heterosexual couple turn out to be gay all the time. It's like, well, it didn't work for that. Anyway, Helen Wilkes, thank you very much for the £2 super chat. That's very kind of you. And happy New Year. Dave Grohl does at least hate Trump, though, says Gareth T, which is a very good point. Yes. Thamo Mbeki and his health minister thought AIDS could be cured with beetroot, a bit like Trump and bleach for COVID, says Paul. Yeah, wasn't great. And then, so look, there are some reasons to be cheerful about what we've achieved in the last 25 years. And also, despite the best efforts of the oil companies, the fossil fuel companies, the dirty fuel companies, people are slowly progressing towards greener forms of energy. There is a forms of transport. There is a push in the EU, at least, for green initiatives. In the US, there is as well. I think they're going to take a knock because Trump is going to stop any subsidies that are going towards green initiatives, and he's going to put them into oil pipelines instead because he's a gobshite. The thing is, it's now cheaper to produce energy through wind farms and solar than it is to produce energy using any other method. So let the market decide. Come on, capitalists. Come on, ultra-capitalists. Let the market decide. But no, what they do is they go, oh no, we're not going to allow wind farms on land, say the free market capitalists of the Tory party, because they'll spoil the view. Do you want to spoil the view even more? A bunch of corpses floating past your window when the bloody country floods. Dickheads. Anyway, I'll tell you who's not a dickhead. Veg Pie. Thank you very much, Veg Pie. Dropped in a £10 super chat. That is very, very kind of you. Happy New Year, Graham. Celebration to you and yours. Have a great one. Thank you. And Super Tiny says, beetroot is gross. Oh, yeah. To be honest, many of us are afraid or comfortable to come together and collectively change the status quo, and the powermongers encourage our division. Scott, yes, and this was going to be my second point. Next year, we are going to take the fight like never before. and all of us can do something. And I'm going to tell you what you can do, right? If you might be sitting there feeling absolutely powerless right now, right? There's something you can do. You can empower the people who can do something. The people, not necessarily like me, but like, Femi or Zoe Gardner or Supertansky. Give them a boost. Just a message to say, I love what you're doing. Carol Vorderman even. Please keep doing it, because we need that. We need that. And because of the stupid way our brains work is, if we get 100 nice messages and one mean one, we tend to hyper-focus on the mean one, right? We need your support. Not necessarily financial support, although thank you very much, Yoni, for the €2 super chat. The last quarter century has been ... interesting. Yeah, I mean, the world should be our oyster, but it's not quite gone that way. But thank you very much for the super chat, Yoni. But yes, your support is absolutely instrumental in what needs to be done over the next few years. You need to support the people, not necessarily with money. I'm not saying, give us loads of money. I'm not saying that. I'm saying just with you, coming along, watching our shows, just leaving a nice comment. Don't even bother watching the shows if you don't want to. Just go to the video that we just made and go, hey, I hope you're feeling good today. Give us a thumbs up. Give us that encouragement, because we really, really need it. Because I find that a lot of the other content creators, including myself, who do this, as a full-time job, we really struggle. We really struggle, especially when we get so much shit. And do you know what? I get 0.1% of the shit that someone like Marina Perkis or Supertansky or Gemma Forte get. They get so much for being a woman, because so much discourse on the internet is inherently misogynistic. So please give us a boost in the next year, because we have got a lot of stuff to do. So just a simple nicety, a thank you, on those videos that you watch. If they're, you see them on TV or you hear them on the radio, get on Blue Sky or Threads or whatever your poison is, and write them a message saying, oh, I heard you on the radio. You are fantastic. You're really good. Thank you so much for doing this. Doesn't cost you anything except a little bit of time, but it can make all the difference. Believe me, it can make all the difference. So that's what I'd like you to, that's what I'd like your New Year. I'm not going to dictate that this should be your New Year's resolution, but noisy bugger. But it definitely should be your New Year's resolution. Anyway, I'm going to get going in a moment. But first of all, Darren Christian, thank you so much. I hope this makes you feel a bit better. Happy New Year to you and your friends and family. Thank you so much for the £20 super chat, mate. That is really, really kind of you. So there you go. There we go, says Super Tiny. Portugal powered 95% of its energy grid by just renewables last month, and it's powered 100% by renewables in the last 6 days. Yeah, because it's cheaper. It's the market. The people wanting to keep us in the 20th century. Who else have we got in there? Benjamin, there was also a country that powered itself by 100% renewables for 10 months straight. The name of it is escaping me currently. I think that was us, wasn't it? Was that us, Benjamin? Did we do that? The likes of Iceland and New Zealand have been powering themselves by renewables since forever, because they got geothermic power. Sorry, geothermal power, not thermic. Anyway, hey Graham, keep up the good work. That's the spirit. Thank you very much, Super Tiny. Right, I'm going to get off now. So I'm not going to be back on this year. This is the last show of the year. I'm going to keep trying to do these morning brews as often as I can. I'm trying to do them every day. It's a lot of work. Bloody hell. When I was doing it just on the weekdays and Phil was doing 2 of them, it was so much easier, because you got to get up and you got to think, what am I going to talk about today for half an hour? And you got to kind of like write out, not like script it, but, write down some notes, and you've got to design the thumbnail, and then you've got to put that on and do the blurb. And yes, bloody hell. And then afterwards, I'm kind of like, oh, it's only like 10 o'clock in the morning, and I'm like, oh, I'm ready to go back to bed now. But yeah, Leapskin, I always make a point of telling Super Tanty that I love her and her content when she drops a video. That's cool. Nice way of earning, quoting MSM stories already out there and making money off the back of it. Lol. Keep up the good work, Graham. I've been following you since 3 Blokes in the Pub. I love you. I love what you keep doing. Best wishes. Thank you very much to JJR there as well. Is there anything on tonight? No. I'm going to be just having a quiet night in with Catherine. We're gonna go to the fishmongers. We're probably going to do some Caribbean style fish dish for the last food of the millennium. Millennium? What the hell? Of the year? Jesus, we're just falling into a temporal rift. Just before we go though, Do you know where I was? Do you know where I was 25 years ago today? Does anyone in the chat know? Where in the world I was for the Millennium? I've mentioned it before, so someone might remember it, might, light something up in the back of their head. But yeah, let's see if anyone knows before I go. My New Year's resolution is 1080p. Woo, fancy. Well, mine's 4K, mate. So yeah. Repulsive, jealous. What? Thanks, Graham. Happy New Year to you and yours and everyone here. Goodbye. Do your own research, people. Don't take what's said as gospel. Quarter century. So where was I a quarter century ago? For the Millennium. Does anyone know? I think if you've read my book, you might remember. I think I mention it. In the last chapter. So I mean, if you've got that far. By the way, this is available as an audio book read by me. So if you want to read it as an audio book, yeah, it can work. Gingerman, Egypt, says Leapshin. Yes, I was in Egypt. I was at the pyramids at a Jean-Michel Jarre concert at the pyramids. Lots of fireworks for the Millennium, and it was dry. We weren't allowed to have alcohol, so we smuggled vodka, Fineland vodka, in a lemonade bottle, and we were just, because as we were going in with the bottles, they were opening the bottles and sniffing them to make sure we weren't taking any booze in to the arena outside the pyramids. But no, it was bloody fantastic. It was really cool, and I was really hopeful. For the new Millennium. But anyway, I digress. By research, he means YouTube videos. Yeah. Do your own research. Get yourself a PhD. Get yourself published in a peer-reviewed journal, right? And then get back to me with the research that you've done. Thank you very much. Okay, so one for the list. Moving on. Right, so thank you very much for watching. Thanks for all your support over this year and previous years as well, for some of you. We're going to be making more content next year. We'll be going into... we've got this whole plan of what we're going to do, working together with me and some of the other content creators you know and love. And yeah, I'd just like to say thank you, genuinely thank you for supporting us over the years and making it so that, we can do this. We can actually come together and have a laugh and have a chat and talk about what's going on in the world and know that we're not alone in thinking, bloody hell, what the hell? Which is what I feel quite a lot of the time. So thanks very much for the super chats. Thanks for the chats. Thanks for the support. Give us a like on the way out if you're so minded. And until next year, I'll say hello, good evening, welcome, and goodbye.